Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Chan. I lead our partnerships team at Chargebee. And I'm going to try to break it down into a few stories about how we've gone through, as probably many of you have, a lot of pain, suffering, maybe scars, to try to mature your partner operations along the way. Okay? So just a brief introduction about Chargebee. So we started in 2011. And the partnerships team actually started in 2019. I actually originally started in what's called the growth team, which is really focused on startups using accelerators and venture capital to really identify early stage companies that could start using Chargebee. And then in 2019, the management team said, you know, we should really do this partnership thing. So relative to maybe some of your journeys, I mean, the company had already started scaling. There were lots of employees already, even before the partnership team started. You know, many of you may be much smaller in size, and then maybe in year 2 or 3 started a partnerships team, right? So because of that, and I kind of described that big ball that happened in the first couple of years as we had basically had a lot of partnerships, but they were really product integrations, right? So we're a subscription billing platform. We're going to connect to QuickBooks. We're going to connect to HubSpot. We're going to connect to MailChimp. The problem is that after the connection was made, everybody in the room here, you know, it's like, well, where's the go-to-market? Did we do anything around getting pipeline? None of that existed. Right? It was purely done for the point of view of the customer needed it, we're going to build it. So we got in this mentality of just building integrations. So I had to take the task of turning it into something that was operationalized, but more importantly, going from sort of a passive relationship to something that was active. So we're kind of in year 3 of our journey, where, you know, first I had to sort of take worth of what we're doing and then try to figure out where to go from there. So the first thing I did in 2019 and into 2020 was I actually just didn't have any preconceived notion about what the partner program should be, right? You know, everyone knows, okay, we're going to have the classic bars, right? They're going to be bronze, silver, gold, platinum, whatever the naming convention you have. And instead of doing that, and instead of coming up with a framework and say, okay, I'm going to just force fit everybody into it, I first said, what do they really want, right? Because having done business development partnerships before, it's not going to be one size fits all, even if you try to put them into a category. And so I actually spent the first 6 months on the job just talking to as many of our partners as possible, because I basically told them, like, look, we're doing you no favors other than we have a connectivity. What do you want from us, right? What could we ask from you? Now, in certain cases, we also work with a lot of payment providers like Stripe, Adyen, Visa, Checkout, all these companies. It was sort of like I had something of value, I just didn't know what it was worth, right? And so by listening and understanding and seeing all these patterns, we started figuring out what they needed. And so one of the things that I did was instead of just having purely partner managers, I said, hey, that's going to be sort of focused on selling or driving pipeline. One of the other things I did was, well, what about all this other stuff, right? Because you as a partner manager or someone who was earlier in your career as a partner manager, what else did you have to do? You had to do sales, marketing, enablement, operations, working with finance, working on contracts. You don't have time to do that if you're trying to scale a partner program to have hopefully hundreds, if not dozens of partners. So one of the things I did was I created a partner success organization, because that would be this starting to form an idea of what's called a partner pod. So think of, right, everyone's used to hearing the term sales pod. You have your SDR, you have your AE, customer success. I would just basically mimic that into a partner pod. So in this case, it was partner manager, partner success, account manager, so on the sales side, and then operations in the back end. So that was kind of the formation of how do we listen to the customer and what they really want. And what they really wanted was to show that I care about you as a partner, right? So if I bring 4 people to the meeting, or if I bring 2 or 3 people, That's going to be way more impressive than, someone from my team always being the face of the company day in, day out, and you never see anyone else, right? So I'd advise you to think about, what do they want? Well, they want attention. So if I'm going to give them attention, why not throw more people at the problem? So am I having the same problem as Sunir? Next, here we go. All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is know what your program or your company is worth, right? So I talked about earlier how we worked with payment providers. And for us, we're looking at how much transaction volume is going through a PayPal versus a Stripe versus Visa. So I had at least some baseline of what I could assess as what we were valued at to the partner, right? So rather than saying, hey, partner, if you join us, this is your benefits, it was still, again, trying to figure out what they need from us, okay? And so I said, is it a $1 million problem, a $100 million problem, or maybe even a $1 billion problem, right? These have very different implications for what you can ask for, but also asking them, what does this mean to them? So, right, case in point, I had a conversation with one of our payment processors, and I said, hey, we're processing 30 million in revenue a year, okay? That's at least something. There's a signal there. It's kind of working. We have a few customers. I asked them, do we qualify for some kind of partner tier, or is there something I can ask for? And the answer was no. You don't even rank, in the sort of top quartile. You need to be here in order for us to really start talking and really start, having us pay attention to you. I said, you know what, that's at least a start. So the start was get to 100 million in volume. Figure out how to do that, and then you're gonna have some resources unlocked. So in that case, right, I had a very clear goal. It was achievable. Yes, it had to do some hard work on our side, but once we got there, we could go back to them and say, hey, we hit this mark. Now what can you do? What does it unlock? There's another conversation that I had with a different payment processor where we're already processing over $1 billion. And I said, what is that worth to you? What does that unlock? Because that's a tremendous amount of volume, right? I should be able to ask for, lunches with the CEO, with our CEO. I should be able to do a lot of strategic initiatives. I should be able to see how fast can I double, if not triple that volume, right? And the response was, well, you're a strategic partner, but I don't know anything else I can give you. Well, what does that mean? I mean, isn't this worth something to you? I mean, there's revenue that they're deriving. They're using us as a channel to try to drive an increase in transaction volume. And so I was really surprised that every time I asked the same question, what is $1 billion worth to you? They couldn't come up with a coherent answer about what this allows us to get access to or what this buys. And so I would ask you, think about that, not necessarily, again, in terms of these tiers, but what does that relationship mean, right? Because, management's going to come to you, if not, you're trying to evaluate, how do I think about delivering some kind of program offering or a set of services based on the worth of that, right? And for those of you who maybe the partner program is a little bit further along, right? When's the last time you did an audit of your program? When's the last time you thought about where are you in the maturity level of your partner program? So maybe your partner program is kind of in the middle where we are. Maybe your program is fairly mature, like you have all your levels down, everybody kind of falls nicely into a tier, into a program. But how often do you actually audit that and say, hey, is there a new way to do it? So a good example, BigCommerce, who's one of our partners, we originally had an integration with them. That was kind of the minimum just to be part of their program. You'd get listed, maybe we'd have availability to do some go-to-market activities. After we had certified our application to be integrated with their marketplace, they said, you know what, actually we're gonna just completely throw out our entire partner program, and you're gonna be in limbo for a little while we figure out what it means to be a partner with us. So it wasn't pay to play, it wasn't how many mutual installs, it was you're just going to be in limbo for a little while, right? Because they took the time to do this kind of audit about what it really means. And one of the things they told us was, this pay to play where if you pay $10,000 a year or $25,000 a year, it's not meaningful because then you kind of have potentially less than optimal solutions, but because they just have a large budget, they're sort of pushed to the top. Where we should actually think about it as what is the value that the customer is going to drive? And so that gave kind of equal footing to a company like ours that just had a very immature relationship with them, but they saw huge strategic value where there's an opportunity. And so because of that, fast forward about 15 months later, we reset the conversation with them. And so instead of, again, being put into like a tier, we're now trying to come up with a more custom solution. Now, obviously, that may or may not be scalable, but that's just another way to try to think about how many partners you have and where you want to go with your program. Okay, so the third one I'm going to raise is this, and this is probably the hardest thing that we're working through. I would say that it's every year that we've worked on this, it's gotten much better, even as the company has grown. So just to give you perspective, when I started the partnerships team, we were about 250 people. 2022, we're like 1,100 people. So there's more departments, more people I have to figure out who to work with. How do I coordinate with different teams? Maybe there's whole new teams I didn't even know about that I had to coordinate with. And so I really like this concept of the horizontal organization, right? It helps you and it makes you think about how flat can we make things, because we're really focused on how do we service the partner or how are we driving some of our North Star metrics like source pipeline, revenue, et cetera. And so we have this kind of mentality of like, how do we get cross-functional squads, right? So if there's a special project name, we have interesting project names like Project Blank, Project Sticky, I don't know, all kinds of weird names. But the whole point is we are trying to get more and more teams working across, right, each other to try to get to a common goal. And that's really hard to do if maybe in the remote setting, you just don't see them, you don't have that much of a relationship. But it's really important, right, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's really hard for partnerships teams to influence even internal teams because we're just trying to do as much as we can and push as hard as we can. So the important thing is, how do we have a lot of projects with a lot of squads that can help us, either for internal initiatives, external, whatever they are. And then the last thing that I'll talk a little bit about in a subsequent slide is reviews. And what I mean by that is there should hopefully be, if there isn't, a regular cadence that goes not only from the squad to your functional lead, all the way up to hopefully your management team. And if all of the other teams have that, why doesn't partnerships, right? I have seen, unfortunately, some teams where partnerships are just kind of off to the side. We have our own operating rhythm, but we never get accountable all the way up to, let's say, the CEO. And that's not good. Like, we should have the same rigor, the same construct as a product team, an engineering team, a marketing team, and a sales team. So it basically comes down to kind of these hard and soft targets, right? Hard targets, everybody nods their head. Yes, I know what these are. I know what they are at my company. I know I have to achieve them. But the soft targets, though, I would say these are the ones where you really have to understand how the company is operating and how you can work within that construct to be successful, right? So in the revenue organization, and this is permeated to the rest of the company, we have this concept of a management operating rhythm. So take each quarter, break it down by month, and then break it down by week. So every quarter, we're going to do a review of what happened and how do we look forward into the following quarter. Okay, and then at every month, we're going to also evaluate what are we able to do in the month, what are we able to achieve. And then every week, you have a cadence of checking in with your team, checking in with the project or squad so that you are making this constant progress. Now, it isn't to say that all of it is always going to be positive, but part of this operating rhythm is to also identify among all the projects, if not among all the teams, where are things being inefficient? Where do we, as a management team or as a leadership team, need to focus so that successive quarters over a longer range of time do see material improvement? So just because you missed a month or you missed a quarter, sure, you're going to get dinged on your commission, you're going to get more pressure because now you have to make up the difference. But if there's consistency saying that every month they're improving, or every month or every quarter there's sort of improvement overall as a whole squad, a whole company, et cetera, that's where we want to think about progressing the company, because then we would have addressed the most important deficiencies. We would have addressed where the communications are being broken down, because then hopefully the goals get achieved. The second one, and this sounds really silly, but have rules of engagement. So in our organization, I'm in the revenue organization reporting to the CRO, we have rules of engagement for every department to each other. So we have one for sales, customer success. We have a rev ops team instead of a sales ops team. And then sort of like, how does everyone work with us, right? So these are all the processes and procedures for some of the critical activities, but also just in general, who to contact, where's the resource for this? How do you, start a conversation with us? This is important, and having that allows you then to hopefully not re-explain everything, but also makes you think about over time, like we started with this one way of engaging, maybe it's not efficient now because there's a whole new team or there's a whole new department that we haven't accounted for. And so it allows you, again, to continually improve by auditing your own rules of engagement. So we regularly update this, probably every 6 months, if not every year. Process and procedures for critical activities. So this is like something that I think when I first started, it was like, oh, it's all in my head. I had a really small team. It was really easy to communicate. But now the team is much bigger, multiple time zones. We have to engage with more and more teams, right? Like I said, with all this growth, we're starting to really document, how do we work with each other, establishing SLAs. I think this is really important because if we're trying to, again, deliver every month, every quarter, hey, if some other part of the organization isn't adhering to it, that's where you have to call it out, but also how do you work with them to improve it? And then last but not least, I think you all know this or have experienced many stories around what is that internal motivation that you need to do? So for us, we have about, I think, 300 people in the sales organization. Me and my team, there's no way in a given month I am able to have a conversation one-on-one with every AE, every sales manager, every CSM. So finding out who those champions are, who can be your amplifier, so you can be really efficient. Because let's be honest, right? Every department's going to have a newsletter saying, oh, we did all these great things. How many of people are actually going to read all the great things that you did, from top to bottom and actually retain what they just read, right? I had one sales rep tell me, Eric, I wish there was a better forum because I really don't know what's going on in the company. I'm like really focused on my accounts and closing my deals. And I said, well, do you even read some of these emails from, your CRO, your head of sales? No, I just skipped them because I'm just too busy to read them. So like, you got to find multiple ways. And so for us, it was leveraging our sales directors, right? Leveraging marketing to really kind of amp it up. But then also when we have our monthly all hands, trying to actually call out certain AEs or CSMs who did a really good job working with the partnerships team, sort of meeting them at their level. And I can tell you all the failures we had too. We said, hey, maybe we should like go to every sales manager's meeting, right? So that we could sort of be a fly on the wall, learn from them, and then we could try to do it that way. That didn't work for some reason. let's leverage the all hands meeting. Everyone's going to pay attention there. That still didn't work. So again, you got to figure out how best to leverage who can be the biggest soapbox and microphone for you, but also this multiple thing, right? So it doesn't mean you get rid of partner newsletters. It doesn't mean you don't participate in providing information at the all hands. You just have to do many, many times, over communicate, on and on and on. So it's kind of obvious, right? You want to align everything. It would be nice if it was all aligned, right? I would tell you that this is nirvana, this is great, everyone try to get to this. The reality is, this is what you're trying to do, okay? This is your best weapon in your company. Leverage your influence. So what does leverage your influence mean? So this is, rather than say, hey, sales team, it would be nice if you could read through our rules of engagement. It would be nice if you could actually see the roster so you could self-service and you could actually contact the partner and everything's great. It doesn't work that way, right? I actually have to be really direct with them and say, hey, I have a credit card. I'm going to buy you and partner A and B drinks at a bar. I need you to make new friends. I need you to work with them. Why? Because they have the same problem you do, which is they got to close deals and they need pipeline. So you're going to share pipeline. Isn't that a novel idea? And oh, by the way, Eric's going to pay for it on his card because, well, I'm the guy who has to buy people drinks and dinner and a few other things, right? That's leveraging my influence. That's all I got is a credit card and saying, you're going to make new friends. It's not all this stuff. I mean, yes, it is that stuff, but the reality is that's just how I have to talk to them, and then they slowly get it, right? The other example that Chris, who's here from my team, we talked about too is, hey, maybe there's a way you can leverage somebody who knows how to do this already, right? Very familiar with the partner motion, very familiar with recruiting their own partners to try to drive pipeline. Okay, well, again, what do we do to leverage our influence? It's not, you do you, go conquer, and you're going to make President's Club. It's, hey, don't go commando on us, right? We're a team. We're a huge company. How do we work with you to not only help you achieve your goal, but how can we make you the example so that all the other AEs can actually learn this, right? Because the numbers don't lie. I mean, we're killing it. Partner source deals, 50% closing, right? Some of these reps, they're not even get to 50% attainment. So it's like, why don't you just look over here rather than trying to do what you're doing? So again, how do I leverage my influence? And you'd be amazed, right? I don't know who doesn't like drinks except for maybe, people who just are hermits, but that's not any of us in the room, I don't think. And then last, and I think this is, I don't think we talk about this enough, is find your culture of celebration. So the reason why I bring this up, right, is when I started the partnerships team in 2019, I think we had that a little bit, but when we hired our new chief revenue officer, one of the themes that he started when he started talking to me about, hey, it's great to meet you, see what you're doing, but I want to let you know, we're going to have this culture of celebration, because when you're grinding it out, either on the partnership side or on the sales side, we're not recognizing people, we're not rewarding people, we're not making it a big deal when something important happens, right? And it doesn't have to be big or small. I mean, big obviously looks great, but small things. So one of the things that we did, operationally, is we implemented this product called Bonusly, right? And it sounds really silly that, hey, Mackenzie here is in the audience, she did a great job, I'm going to give her some points. But the whole idea is that even if it's a small something that she did a really great job on, I'm recognizing her, and it's actually being broadcast to the whole company as a way to show not only my appreciation, but to show that, hey, there are some people out there that are getting recognized for small things, if not obviously closing, $1 million deal for the first time, right? So you, as people in partnerships, right, you have your influence. So why not one of those things also be trying to influence this culture of celebration, right? How do you then get people excited? How do you get people to be recognized more? Hopefully, because you worked with all of us, right? But again, try figuring this out, because I think the more that you can, again, start recognizing people, start telling them they're doing a great job, big and small ways. I think it's important as part of your operational sort of manual to get people excited, because that's a lot of what our job is, right? It's like, how do you get people excited to work with us? And that's it. I'll take questions.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Any questions for Eric? We got a couple minutes before we bring on Bob Moore, CEO of Crossbeam. Questions for Eric? I'm waiting. All right, there's one. I knew I'd find one.
Great presentation, Eric. Question on the soft targets that you had.
Mm-hmm.
What are the, let's say, 1 or 3 or 2 things that you did to actually implement those soft targets, and which actually was valuable for you in your 2-year journey in partnerships?
So, well, all of them I think are important, and we actually have implemented some versions of them. But I think the idea of like so the top one was something that came from leadership, and that was like, hey, we're gonna just try a new way of operating to be more efficient, but also because we have distributed teams, we just need this cadence, right? So everyone knows the expectations. The other 3 were really valuable because it just forces you to write something down, and it forces you to draw a picture of how do you want to work with the sales team? What is off limits, or what is beyond the scope, and what is like, yes, this is in our wheelhouse, right? The other thing it helps you do by doing these 3 things is, can I scale it by automating it or implementing some tool, right? Can I think about self-service, so I'm not answering the same question over and over again? Or the third one is, no, I actually still need to be involved, because that that one initial inquiry is going to lead to like 5 follow-up questions. And so that might be a one where you just might have to say, that's something I'm going to write down as a procedure. I'm going to be involved, but I don't need to automate it, or I just can't. And so it then starts freeing you up to how do you scale, right? Because again, self-service, automation, or filling out forms, great. High volume, you can do that all day long, right? Some of the more complex stuff, that's where you're going to be spending the time, and that's great, because that's hopefully high value.